tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They're hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to say, talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal that's hit him on the pad. He's out. Lions gone. New South Wales are 9 down. Onto Sydney Road, and it hit a car. Oh, I think it's hit a car. What a way to bring up your 50.
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Well, when I was sitting up late at night thinking about revenge for what happened at Lord's in 2023, I never dreamt up that it would be so glorious and reflect what we saw yesterday. We owed England big time for what they did to us in 2023, and boy, did they get their comeuppance at Perth Stadium on Saturday afternoon. It was an absolute flogging from nowhere. England collapsed under Trav Ball, and what we saw was just phenomenal. And Baz and Stokes, who stood there on the Lord's outfield, wagging their finger at us, complaining about a perfectly legitimate dismissal, moaning about the spirit of cricket, those Lord's members who were jeering at our heroic Aussie boys, well, this is what you get. Come down under and get your medicine served back at you. Incredible stuff. And I imagine English fans are dejected, especially the ones who stayed up all night hoping to see England beat Australia after their good start to the Test match. And, you know, you got what you deserve. This was a thrashing. This is karma. And what goes around comes around. Now, I do have some sympathy for the England fans that travelled all those thousands of miles only to watch 2 days of cricket and the last half of the second day to be completely embarrassing. I mean, if I was an England fan, I would be mortified. And we've seen the 2-day test, and I'm a little shell-shocked. I mean, I went to the Adelaide test against India last year. That finished before lunch on the third day. I thought that was quick. But what we saw in these first 2 days was just spellbinding. And look, I'm disappointed maybe we didn't get more cricket, but what we crammed into those 2 days was just unforgettable. I mean, we saw some of the all-time heroic Ashes performances from Australians. Mitchell Starc, Travis Head, Scott Boland. I mean, it was something special, something for the ages. And although the Test match didn't go very long, what we saw was unforgettable. And, you know, when I recorded at the end of the game yesterday, it's kind of hard to digest what we'd seen. And, you know, I've seen a lot of cricket, and there's, you know, a lot of people in that media box who've seen more Test matches than me. And, you know, everybody was, you know, struggling to just come to grips with the extraordinary nature of the match and the Australian performance on that last afternoon. So I guess I've got a few stats here, and these come from Rick Finlay at the ABC, and I think they sort of underscore what an extraordinary game it was. So firstly, it was Australia's 100th win versus England in Australia in Ashes cricket. There have been 186 Test matches here. Australia have now won 100, and England have won 57. And we know most of those 57 haven't come recently because they still haven't won a Test match in 15 years. It is the first 2-day Australia-England test since 1890. 1890, 135 years ago. I mean, that's the Victorian era we're talking about. That was the last time we saw a 2-day Ashes test. No wonder people's heads were spinning. I mean, you think about the intensity of Ashes cricket, and then you just cram that all into 2 days. It's the seventh shortest test ever with a result, just 847 balls in the game, and it is the second shortest ever test in Australia. It's the shortest test since 1931-32. Wickets fell at a rate of 1 every 26.47 balls, the fourth lowest in Australia-England test, and the lowest since 1896. Again, back in the Victorian era, in the 19th century. The run rate throughout the Perth Test was 4.77 runs per over, which is the highest in the 362 tests between Australia and England. And the next highest is 4.36 in the 2001 test. Again, got to go back to 25 years to get even a run rate as close as this. The highest ever in Ashes cricket. This is all in one game. That's why it's hard to digest, because it's the ultimate stats fest, and it's incredible. And it's the fifth highest run rate in all tests, in all 2,607 tests. Now, Australia. Now, let's remember all this talk about Bazball, how they've changed the game. Well, Australia has become the first test team to chase down over 200 at better than a runner ball. Australia got to 2 for 205 in 28.2 overs at a run rate of 7.23 runs. So, Baz and Stokes and Ben Duckett and all you morons have been carrying on about how you've changed Test cricket for years. You just got a lesson, boys. You just got it served right back at you, straight between the eyes. That's right. And Australia have made history with this chase at the expense of these Bazball frauds, because that was a gutless performance. That was a hapless performance, and we'll get to them a bit more. But as I said, you just can't give Australia cricket games like that if you want to come and win an away Ashes. Now let's talk about Travis Head. He's my player of the match. I respect the decision to give it to Mitchell Starc, and I get the reasoning that he took 10 wickets, and 10 wicket hauls by fast bowlers, especially in Ashes cricket, are pretty rare. But Travis Head's innings was the match decisive performance. Chasing 205 in the fourth innings is not easy. It was the highest score of the game, and the only other time that's happened in Test cricket or Ashes cricket is the 2019 Headingley performance by Ben Stokes. So that wasn't an easy chase. He made it look easy, and he was the perfect player to take it on, because in these small chases, you have to keep the scoreboard moving. All of a sudden, Australia, none for 75 because of Weatherald and Head, and the game was basically over. But, you turn it on its head, Australia's 3 for 30. All of a sudden, 205 looks a long, long way. England should have had a much bigger lead, but that wasn't an easy chase, not at all. He made it look easy. So that's why I would have given him the player of the match. I think in many, many years to come, we'll be talking about two players from this game, Head and Starc. But I think it'll be that innings that people particularly remember. So he was a bit stiff there. I think he's had 10 player of the match awards in Test cricket out of 60 tests, and that would have been his 11th. I mean, that's the thing about Head. There is a bit of a gap between his best and his worst, but his best wins games, and they win at big games. I was trying to think about where this ranks in the pantheon of Head innings. And I know it's not the same form, but I would give his 50 over World Cup final innings top spot. Australia had no right to win that World Cup. To beat India in India at home in a World Cup final, and for him to smash 140 odd. So that's my number one Travis Head innings. But this one comes into number 2 spot because, this is the most hyped Ashes series in living memory, maybe since 06-07. And the match was on the line. The pressure was on. Khawaja probably couldn't bat. Lyon was injured. And there was all sorts happening. And he just went out and did it himself. 123 and 83 balls. So that's right. That's gone straight into second spot with Travis Head innings. And yeah, that's why I think he probably should have been the man of the match or player of the match. It was the second fastest Ashes 100 of 69 balls behind Gillies' 57 ball innings. And look, I found it very revealing after play. And I guess this is a good cautionary tale for myself. Just maybe read between the lines a bit more closely when you're listening to what's being said, because the coaches, the selectors, everyone had been saying for a while that Travis Head's best spot in Test cricket was the middle order, and that Travis Head had never made any claims to want to open the batting. He's always said he'll just bat where he wants to. there'd been no whispers that he wanted to open the batting, but then he revealed for the first time last night that he's put his hand up a few times to open the batting for Australia in Test cricket outside the subcontinent. And I think he's been keener to do it than maybe anybody has thought in the past. And this is very revealing. And, you look at Australia's struggles to find an opener in the last couple of years. McSweeney was tried, Constas was tried, numerous others. Khawaja's been struggling. And we've got Travis Head there waiting, wanting to do it. And I guess what's surprising for me is we've just said goodbye to David Warner, who's a very similar type player to Head. And, Head said at the press conference that he understands that Ronnie McDonald and the Brains Trust, Pat Cummins, had wanted Marner, Smith and Head at 3, 4, 5 to give the middle order some stability. But, when you reflect on how many good middle order players there are around Australia and the struggles we've had to find an opener, did they wait too long? Should this have been tried before? And they just haven't been decisive with the opening spot. And for Head to reveal he's kind of coveted it, it's quite surprising. And, have we stumbled on our long-term opener for the next few years? I sort of think, why not? He does it in white ball cricket. So the advantages to him doing it, firstly, when you come in at the top, the field's up. You're not going to get opening bowlers take the new ball and say no slips. So all of a sudden, Head's going to come out if he opens the batting and there'll be more gaps. And Warner was the master of this. You can just get off to a quick start. All of a sudden, you can be, 30 off 30 because Langer and Hayden used to do it, famously. So that's one advantage to him opening the batting. The field's up. Travis Head, if he gets a good ball, whether it's opening or 5, he is vulnerable to that sort of in-swinger on the stumps. If that could happen opening or batting 5. So you're not going to protect him. Okay, obviously he comes in with an older ball, tiring attack. That's probably the difference. But opening batters can set the tone. And we saw in this chase, he just set the tone. He got Australia off to a quick start, but he was quite measured. I think he was 3 off 14 balls. He was watchful. And then he started to take on the England attack and find the gap. So I find it very revealing that he's coveted that position. And look, I'll make no bones about it. I think Usman Khawaja should do what's right for Australian cricket and retire. Now, he is too arrogant to do that, I think. But if he can just look in the mirror and think, is he actually going to be able to contribute much in this series apart from maybe a scratchy 40? And if he looks in the mirror, he probably knows that he won't. And what if his back goes again in a test match? Are we going to play the test 10 men again? That's what Australia did. We beat England with 9 players. Lyon was absent most of the game. Khawaja was injured most of the game, and we still beat them. A golden opportunity. But if I'm Usman, do what's right for the team. Make it easy for the selectors. Just go, you know what, Bales, Andrew McDonald, I've had a great career. Not going to make it to Sydney, and wave the team off into the sunset. And Head and Weatherald open the next game. And then I would bring Webster into number 6. I think that gives you a lot of options with the ball. He's a brilliant field. Obviously, Josh Inglis is another option, but I would move Green up to 5, Webster at 6. And especially if you go into the day-night test, it does give you more options because you could potentially leave Lyon out, play a quick bowler, and then you've got Webster at 6 who can bowl a few spinners if needed. And I just want to make the point about Usman, and I've seen a few comments today. I saw Mike Hussey on Fox Cricket saying that Australia should stick with Khawaja. I've seen Michael Vaughan in the Daily Telegraph write pretty much the same thing. And I would just point out that Usman Khawaja is a colleague of theirs at Fox Cricket. Whether there's any bias there or not, it's not for me to really call out, but there's definitely some underlying bias. You're probably not going to call for your colleague to be sacked, not long before he joins you in the commentary box. So I would just take those comments with a grain of salt. All right, so moving on from Travis Head to Mitchell Starc, 7 for 58 and 3 for 55 in the game, his third 10 for. And In this match, he took a wicket in the first over of both innings. Zach Crawley, who got a pair. I mean, who will forget that incredible caught and bowled from Mitchell Starc, diving to his left, clutching the ball just above the turf. I mean, we know his brother is an Olympian, and geez, there's some great athleticism in Starc, isn't there? The way he was able to do that in his follow through, just jaw dropping. But that's the 25th time he's taken a wicket in the first over, and I'd like to liken it to opening the batting. What a tone setter that is for the Australian team, for the Australian bowling unit. If you can take a wicket in the first over, and for him to do it 25 times, there's no wonder this Australian team wins a lot of games. Starc now has 412 wickets, and the great Wasim Akram has 414 test wickets. So Mitchell Starc has a real opportunity with the pink ball to go ahead of Akram as the greatest left-arm fast bowler in terms of wicket taking. And I think you can make a very good case for Starc being a more consistent bowler than Akram at test level. But you can't separate much of them. Akram's strike rate was 54.6. Stark's is 46.7. But they are different eras, different pitches. And I find it hard to separate those two in terms of quality. I don't think you can say Stark's much better than Akram or vice versa. I think they're very comparable. But what an achievement that would be for Mitchell Starc to go past Akram. In terms of greatest left-arm fast bowlers ever for Australia, it's probably still Alan Davidson. Different era, but he took almost 200 wickets at 20 in Test cricket. So, I mean, Starc, phenomenal career, but people are saying he's our greatest left-arm quick of all time. Different era, but I just don't want to discount Alan Davidson's record. He was something special. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Mitchell Starc developing the wobble seam delivery in the last few years to give him some more consistency. Because if you remember early in his career, when the ball wasn't swinging, Starc was very much a Yorker bouncer bowler. But then he did change. And what I don't want to be forgotten around this is that one of the key influences on his change was Justin Langer. Justin Langer, when he was coach of the team, challenged Starc to get better and develop a stock ball. And, he pushed Starc. He was dropped during the 2019 Ashes tour. And this has propelled Starc to new heights. And sometimes coaching and management can be about pushing the right buttons on a player to get the best out of them. And look what Justin Langer was able to do. So I just don't want that to be forgotten that, 6 years ago, Langer was saying you can be better. And he was right. He was right. Like he was right about Marnus and so many other players. The oracle that is Justin Langer has really had a profound influence on this team. Yeah, and Starc just said, he's been really watching what Hazelwood and Cummins do with the wobble ball, and wobble seam ball, and he developed it. It just adds a string to his bow. If the ball's not swinging, presents an opportunity to go across the right hander. We even saw a couple of Stokes that moved off the seam and had Stokes dismissed. So, profound effort from Starc in this game. And just on Starc, what a revelation as a person he's been in the last few years. He's been very shy, very quiet in the past. I knew from players who I've spoken to that behind the scenes, he's very opinionated, a very deep thinker about the game, very passionate about a lot of things. But he would always keep that very close to his chest. But what a leadership moment for him in this game. No Hazelwood, no Cummins, and to be the player of the match with 10 wickets. And to have come out of his shell a bit, we're hearing his character a bit more. He's doing, I think, a podcast called The Ashes Diary. So this was starting to get to know the character a bit more. And he's someone who Australian cricket fans should immensely respect because, I put it on Twitter and it's true. Usman Khawaja gave himself the nickname the People's Champ, but Mitchell Starc is the real People's Champ. He never toots his own horn, never bigs himself up. He just lets his performances do the talking, and he's a winner. and he's left millions of dollars on the table to play Test cricket for Australia. And when I think of people's champ for Australian cricket, I think Mitchell Starc, not Usman Khawaja. All right, a couple of things before I wrap up. I just don't want it to be forgotten that Scott Boland changed this Test match. And I talked about Travis Head's innings, but Scott Boland's 4 for 33 in the second innings, and his spell of 3 wickets and 11 balls after the lunch break turned this Test on its head. And he's still taking his wickets at a tick over 13. And he had his challenges in the first innings, but I don't want it to be forgotten that Scotty Boland broke open this game for Australia. I mean, he got rid of Duckett, Pope, and Brooke in those 11 balls, and then Starc chimed in with Root not long after, and Australia had taken 4 wickets in 19 balls. But Australia needed Boland. Lyon was off the field. Starc was backing up after heroic performance in the first innings. Brendan Doggett was on Test debut and doesn't present the same type of challenges that Boland does. And he came through 4 for 33. So, when everybody's praising Starc and Head, just remember, without Boland's performance, this match could have turned out very, very differently. While we're on Doggett, he took 5 for 78 across 2 innings. So that's a very good Test debut for him. And obviously Marnus with a lovely unbeaten half century. I thought Steve Smith's captaincy was superb. I don't know if you saw it on the telly as well as you did at the ground, but the way he managed the attack, manipulated the fields, changed tactics in both innings was just incredible. All right, now, a couple of more general questions. Is this good for Test cricket? Are 2 days good for Test cricket? I would say if they become a regular occurrence, no, they're just not. You want Test matches to go, I think, into the 4th day bare minimum. We've seen a lot of 3-day Test matches recently in Australia. Now we've got a 2-day Test match. I don't think it is good for Test cricket. But I gave the stats at the top of the show. I mean, this is a very rare thing. So I don't think we should get ahead of ourselves. But with the prospect of the day-night test being a short test, we could have 2 very short tests to start the series. But then Adelaide played during the day. That wicket's been much more traditional, slower. So we should see a longer test match. And then you get to Melbourne, where we saw 5 days last year. And unfortunately, there were just question marks about my beloved SCG. Who knows what you'll get there, but no, it's not good for Test cricket. This particular test was fine, but people will stop traveling and stuff if this becomes a regular occurrence. But I think we're a bit far from that. The figures that have been quoted that Cricket Australia have lost, over $5 million out of the coffers for the early finish to this Test match. Todd Greenberg, before day 2, was talking to SEN and just hoping the match would get to day 3. Well, unfortunately, Travis Head just batted too quick. And when Travis Head came out to bat with 205 needed in a session, I just didn't really think we'd see it chased down in a session. I thought Australia would probably hit the winning runs, if they did hit the winning runs, just before lunch on the 3rd day. So unfortunately, that didn't happen for Cricket Australia. And I mean, hopefully they can make enough money on the promos for Travis Head's innings or something. So in that sense, it's not good for Test cricket. But all the figures coming out of the broadcast, so those 2 days of Ashes cricket were the most watched days of cricket in Australia ever. 7 Cricket have published their results for the second day, and up to 3 million people watched the game, and almost 1.6 million were watching consistently. So, they have had a huge success on the rating side of things, but I guess they'd just be disappointed it can't be for longer. But a lot of people watch those 2 days, and that is good for cricket. Big issues for England. Well, this is rock bottom for them, and I do feel sorry for their fans that have travelled all the way out here expecting at least a few days cricket, and their team just collapsed. And I would be livid because Stokes and McCullum were defiant afterwards. And it was kind of embarrassing. I mean, the question that's being raised by a lot of people in the English press pack is Cricket Australia had put on a pink ball game for the tourists to warm up for the Brisbane Test. But as I understand it, the England team declined that, and they're sending the England Lions to play the pink ball game, and they're just going to have a net with the pink ball instead. And Vaughan and Agnew have quite rightly been demanding, and they asked Stokes this, Agnew did, that, why won't you consider going and playing in that pink ball game at Manuka Oval against the PM's 11, sorry. It's a 2-day pink ball game, and at least give your batters a chance to acclimatise against the pink ball. Now, the conditions in Manuka Oval and at the Gabba will be different, but it's still the same ball, and you'll be better off than not playing it. But Stokes and Baz were pretty defiant that that's not the way they do things. And in fact, Agnew pushed it a bit with Stokes on the radio, and he pushed back and said, I've answered that, Aggers. But, if I'm an England fan, I'm questioning, are Baz and Stokes really going to give it all on this tour? Because when you've got opportunities to play a warm-up game against a pink ball after you've been rolled in 2 days, maybe you take it. Now, just remember, England's batters did not survive 67 overs across 2 innings. As Steve Smith said, they hadn't even got to the second new ball across 2 innings. That's how brainlessly short those innings were. And that is embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing, and just, belies belief, really. And for them not to take up the opportunity to play a practice game, if I was an England fan who's paid a lot of money to come out here, I would be livid. So, yeah, I don't know what to say, really. It's, Ben Stokes said, hey, he kept saying this after the game that, Travis Head showed us that, showed everybody that the way we were playing is right. The fact that you needed to be aggressive, that was right. Well, that's not true, because Travis Head played really smartly. He's got his game plan, and it's not driving on the up through the offside against Scotty Boland on a good length. So, yeah, I think it was pretty brainless stuff from Stokes and Baz after play. The only thing, there was some flick, like you could tell McCullum was rattled, and good. This is revenge, buddy. This is how's the spirit of cricket now. Yeah, you like it? Like it when it comes back at you? So, yeah, just incredible. They had a golden opportunity to win that match, and they let it slip through their fingers. I guess, well, look, that's all I really wanted to come to you, because I've just been trying to come to you with, because I've just been, trying to make sense of what we saw yesterday. And, I loved every minute of it. It was played at breakneck speed. It was, far too short. I've got a few days now to check out Perth, a few extra days than I budgeted for time-wise, but that's good. I'm thrilled that Australia's 1-0 up. At lunch yesterday, if you'd said, look, you can have 2 options. Either England bat well and Australia's chasing 350 and maybe win or lose, and the match goes 3 or 4 days, or England completely embarrass themselves again, and Travis Head hits one of the most breathtaking centuries in Test history, and you get to see it all, but the game finishes on the second afternoon. I would have snapped your hand off for the second option, because those pommy tears at the ground were absolutely joyful to see. I mean, the Barmy Army got out of there so friggin' fast after they were humiliated down under. It was something. It was absolutely something. I guess, look, the only thing I want to say is, I just want to preach a bit of caution to the Aussie fans, because back in 2005, England came in and landed a few punches in that first test at Lords, but they didn't win. Australia won. Glenn McGrath bowled Australia to victory. And then in the second test, he stepped on the ball and England won, and the series was 1-1, and they went on to win the series. So just because Australia have won the first test doesn't mean that, okay, the series is done, because England will know they had their opportunity. But, being played in Australia, you don't want to let Australia get ahead, especially as they hold the Ashes. So they're basically, 1.5 ahead of England right now. But who knows? If you're an England fan, hold on to that hope. And if you're an England fan, why are you still listening? I'm so mean to you guys. But yeah, if you're an England fan, hold on to that in the 2005 Ashes, when England last had this greater chance to win against us, they lost the first test. I know it's in England. I know it's a different situation, but that's what all I'd be clinging to if I was an English fan. Me personally, as an Aussie fan, yeah, I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I think these two are just too dumb. Baz and Stokes, I mean, it's Tweedledum and Tweedledummer running English cricket. All right, that's it from me. I'll be back soon. I'll come back tomorrow. I think I've got a few guests coming on now to talk about the test match and the wash up from it and build up to the second test.